You don't need to bring it out right now, but we'll, you know, okay. Let us get started with amortization schedules. I know you've been waiting all week for that. You're like, once you get those topics, you're like, oh my gosh, can't wait. All right, so here's what we're going to start with. We're going to show you how to construct an amortization schedule for a loan by hand and using the calculator. Then we'll probably pop open the laptops and show you how to do it real quickly in Excel, okay? Because obviously a little bit quicker in Excel. All right, so first things first, we need to figure out, okay, the details of our loan. So we're going to need to know a few variables to set this thing up. First of all, is this going to be annual or monthly? We're going to need to know our loan amount. We're going to need to know our interest rate. We're going to need to know the loan amortization period. Okay. And that should get us started. All right. So, first of all, let's do a simple annual one, and we'll make our loan amount $100,000. We'll make our interest rate 10%. Yeah, I know. Well, I'm doing this on purpose because of the numbers. Okay. And the loan amortization period, in this case, we're going to do it for 3 years. All right. And the reason I want to do it for 3 years is so that you can see the full and complete schedule, okay, for those 3 years. All right, so an amortization schedule pretty much starts out, you've got a handful of columns, and the first column over here is going to be the period number. All right, now the period number could be obviously months or it could be years, depending on whether we set this thing up as annual or monthly. So in this case, we're going to be doing it for 3 years. So each of these will represent a year. All right, then the next column over is going to be our beginning balance for that period. All right? So in this case, we're starting with the loan in year 1, and so at the beginning of year 1, our balance is going to be $100,000. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we're going to compute the payment amount, do here in a second on the calculator. Then we're going to calculate the interest paid. And then the principal repaid. And then our ending balance. Okay, does any of this look familiar to you? Yes, no, possibly could be? Yes. Okay, now, so let's start out with the first piece, which is to get our payment amount. So the first thing you're going to do, 1 payment per year. All right, clear everything out. And then we'll start with our loan amount of $100,000 as our present value. 10% as our interest rate, 3 years as our term, so 3 shift in or 3 in, either way in this case. Then you're going to solve for payment. Okay? All right, so let's start with that. All right, so our initial payment is going to be $40,211.48. Okay, everybody good?
Do we put that in like a negative?
No, I don't need to.
Okay.
I mean, you can if you want to, I don't care. But, I mean, it's the payment. All right? Now, I want to show you real quickly how to calculate the interest by hand, and then we'll show you how to do it on the calculator using the amortization function. All right? So in this case, since it's annual, it's pretty simple. You're going to take 100,000, and our interest rate was what? 10%. So $10,000 is going to be the interest paid for that first year. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Single payment, you know, so there's no monthly compounding, it's just a simple interest of $10,000. So the simple math is going to be to take now your payment amount, subtract out the interest that you paid, and that leaves us with $30,211.48 as the principal that was repaid on the loan. In other words, the actually paying back on the loan itself. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay? Now, then we need to calculate the ending balance on the loan. So that's going to be the beginning balance minus the principal repaid. Now, the most common mistake that people will make is they'll simply take the beginning balance minus the payment amount. But that's not right because that includes interest. So we only want to take out the amount of the loan that we've actually repaid, which is the principal portion. So in this case, 100,000 minus 30,211.48 gives us an ending balance of 69,788.52. Okay, everybody understand how we did that and what we did? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so now that ending balance at the end of year one becomes our beginning balance here at the beginning of year two, 69,788.52. Okay, everybody still with me? All right, now our payment amount stays constant in this case because it's the same payment amount each year, yes? For normal mortgage. We're going to look at mortgages today, that's not the case, but in this case, it is. Normal mortgage. So the 40,211.48 is going to be the same for that year, and it's also going to be the same for the third year, so we can go ahead and just write it in if we want to. Okay? Now, for the interest that's paid in the second year, what are you going to do?
Multiply the beginning balance.
Take the beginning balance for the second year, which is the 69,788.52 times 10%. So now you're going to end up with $6,978.85 as your interest. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay? Now, you're going to take and you're going to subtract the interest paid from the payment amount. And so the principal that has been repaid for the second year is $33,232.63. Okay? And then now, we want to get the ending balance for that year. So we subtract the principal repaid for the second year from the beginning balance. And we end up with $36,555.89. That now becomes our beginning balance for the third year. Okay? Everybody still with me? Yes or no? Okay. Now we take the beginning balance $36,555.89, we subtract out, or I'm sorry, we multiply by 10%, so that gives us interest of $3,655.59. Okay? Everybody still with me? Okay, so this is once again year 1, year 2, and year 3, and that's the interest for each of those years. Okay? Now to get the principal repaid, we basically subtract out the 36,55.59, or 30, you see what I'm doing. 40,211.48 minus 36,55.59 gives us $36,555.89. Okay, now with the magic of all of this, you take the beginning balance, subtract out the principal repaid, and we are left with a $0 balance at the end of the 3 years. Okay? Is everybody comfy cozy with that? Okay? So now you have completed an entire amortization schedule from beginning to end. So let's show you how to do it on the calculator. Okay? All right. So if you go back up here to what we had done originally on the calculator. Matter of fact, I'll redo it down here just so that we've got some space to kind of, matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this because it's kind of in the way. Get rid of those calculations. Okay. Workspace here. All right. So we kind of go back up to this whole thing of 100,000. We put that in as our loan amount. We put in 10% as our interest rate. We put in this case, 3 years as our term. And then we solve for payment. And we got the 40,211.48. Okay, so we're just kind of getting back to that. Now, to use the amortization function, here's how it would work. All right, we're going to start off with one input, one shift, amortize, equal. And then we're going to draw blank, hit equal again, draw blank, hit equal again, draw blank. Okay? All right. So 100,000, present value, 10% interest rate, 3-year term, solve for that payment, then one input, one shift, amortize, equal. All right? We hit equal the first time. We get 30,211.48. Okay, you see what that matches up with. That was our principal in that first month, or first year, I'm sorry. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so in other words, that would be, whoops, that would be our principal.
It says print on the calculator?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's your principal. All right, you hit equal again, and it gives you $10,000. Well, that's going to be the interest. Okay. That matches there. Okay. And then if we hit equal again, we get our balance. All right, of 69,788.52. All right, Everybody good with that? Yes or no? So all we have done with this amortization function is we're just telling the calculator we want period number 1 through period number 1. That's all this is really telling the calculator. Now, in this case, if we want for period 2, it's going to be 2 input 2. Not 1 input 2, but 2 input 2. I'll explain the difference here in a second. That's the reason why when you hear me say the input, I say through, okay? Because if we were to do 1 input 2, it would give us everything combined for period 1 and 2, okay? Well, that's not what we want. We want just period 2, okay? All right? Okay, so let's do that real quick. So we get 33, 232, 63. Okay, once again, matches up above. Interest, 69, 78, 85, get equal again. Gives us our balance. 36,555.89. All right. For year 3, 3 input 3. Shift. Amortize. Equal. 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 Okay. Okay, 36,555.89, 3,655.59, and 0. Okay, yep.
The ending balance for the second year wouldn't always equal the principal of the third year, would it?
Well, if that's the last year of the loan, then yes.
Okay. Right, it's the last year of the loan. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, now, just for fun, all right, let's do 1 input 3. Shift, amortize, equal, equal, equal. Okay, so what you end up here is $99,999.99, or basically the 100,000 rounded. Okay. Here you end up with 20,634.44, and here once again 0. All right. So all this is telling you, this is what we were saying earlier. By doing 1 input 3 or 1 period number 1 through period 3, all it's basically doing is just pretty much just adding up all the principal that you paid over those 3 years or 3 periods. Here, it's adding up your total interest charges over those 3 years or 3 periods. And then here, it's obviously just a balance at the end of period 3. Okay, does that make sense? Now you're going to say, okay, why do we care about this? Okay. One of the reasons why you're going to care about this is that for income tax purposes, one of the things that you get to deduct is your interest expense, okay, as a tax deduction, all right, each year off of real estate that you own, all right, and we're talking about commercial real estate, not talking about residential real estate, we're talking about commercial real estate. Well, residential real estate, yes, your personal residence, but that's a whole different thing, we don't want to confuse the two. So the point is, you would need to know for each year that you own a property, how much are you actually going to get as a tax benefit, so that's why you want to have that separated out if for no other reason, okay? But also, the benefit of being able to do an amortization schedule is to obviously see at any given point in time, how much do you still owe on the property, so that you know what the payoff amount is. And this sort of scenario is no different than a car loan, okay? So if you have a 3-year car loan for a $100,000 car at 10%, it'll be the same payment and same schedule, okay? So it's not like the car loan and the home loan or Commercial loan in this case is really any different, okay? A loan is a loan is a loan in this instance, all right? Any questions on this? Okay, pretty straightforward, all right? Now, let's do one monthly. You know, on monthly, we're not going to carry it all the way out simply because it's going to eat up way too much time that I think you already have the mindset of how it works. So in this case, let's say that we've got a loan, 12 payments per year. And in this case, give me a dollar amount for the loan.
1 million.
1 million. Very creative number. All right. $1 million as our loan amount. All right. And what interest rate do we want to have for this loan? 3.5. 3.5 or 3. Okay, we'll go 3.25. All right. 3.25 as our interest rate. And how many years? 15. Okay. All right. So first thing, just like last time, we're going to start off get the monthly payment, or in this case, we'll get the payment, which in this case happens to be monthly. All right. All right. So I get $7,026 and let's say 69 cents rounded. Okay, everybody good? All right, so here's what I want you to do. I just want you to calculate the amortization schedule for the first 2 months. Okay?
Like separately?
What?
Separately? Or together?
Together, just like we did.
Like 1 through 2, not 1.
Yeah, just
1, 2.
month 1 and month
Okay.
2.
So basically, individually.
Yes. Period 1, period 2. Okay, got it?
Just for
Just for the first 2 months,
Okay.
just like I've got up on the screen.
Got
Yep,
it.
Judson.
Quick question. The payment amortized, that's just how much is being paid, right? That
Right.
you added up? You did that additional, that didn't calculate it on the calculator. you
Yeah,
just added
okay,
up.
I was going to explain. Okay, so once again, get down to the payment. Once you've got down to the payment, then all you're going to do is do the input 1, shift, amortize, equal, and equal. And then you'll do 2, input, 2, shift, amortize, equal, equal, equal. All right, so the first time, or the first situation, you're gonna get the principal repaid, so you should get 43 to 1835, and then 2708 33, and then your balance of the 995 681 65, and here 4330 05 26 96 64, and then 991 351 60. Okay? Does everybody understand what we did? Yes or no? Okay, now, this is where then we begin to make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, I got the same results, but just by off by one decimal. Sorry, the last number.
Like,
So would you?
so now, when you say it's off by one, you
Yeah.
said, okay.
So 991, 351.59 is what I got.
Well, I just rounded up.
Okay.
Yep, that's it. Yep. Okay, now, let's just say that we want to know how much interest that we paid in the first year of this loan. We'll see if your brain is functioning. What would we do?
1 through 12.
Excellent. 1, input 12. Why 12? First 12 months. Okay, first year. All right. Shift, amortize. In this case, we're looking for the interest. Obviously, it's going to be the second equal, so let's just see what we get. So 31,721.08 would be the total interest paid during the first year. Everybody cool with that? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay, now, what if I make it a little bit more interesting? What if I say, all right, I want you to tell me the total amount of principal repaid during, let's say, year 5. Okay, total amount of principal repaid only during year 5.
It would be,
60.
it would be 45 to 60.
Not 45.
60.
40,
60.
40.
No,
60 input 60.
no,
One input 60.
no,
Forty-eight.
no.
Yeah, 48 to 60.
This is why I'm doing this, because you've got to understand this. So, okay,
60 to 72.
no, it's gonna be 49 to 60.
I said that.
No, well, all I heard was 48 over here, I did not hear 49. Okay, so real quickly, 1 to 12 is year 1. 13 to 24 is year 2. 25 to 36 is year 3. 37 to 48 is year 4. 49 to 60 is year 5. 61 to 72 is year 6, and so forth, so on. So everybody follow that, okay? Because you only want to capture January through December. Well, January through December of the second year is not month 12, it's month 13. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, there was a method of my madness in having you go through that mental exercise, because inherently your first inclination is to simply say, oh, it's 48 through 60, okay, or it's just 0 through 60, or it's 1 through 60, or whatever. It's 49 to 60, okay? All right, so going back up here, we want to know the principal during that 5th year. 49, input, 60, shift, amortize, equal. Okay, and you would get 59,890.90. Okay? Not getting that?
So that's January to December.
That's January through December of the 5th year.
I got 93.
How many decimal places is your calculator set for?
2.
That's fine. Okay, hit the shift key, hit the equal key, and hit 9.
Still 9-3.
No, that's because it's still embedded, so it's redo the problem all over again, and then it'll be fine.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Are we all good up to this point? Yes or no?
1 second.
So if it's set to 4 decimal places too, that's not good?
Well, okay.
Yeah, I'm not getting
The
it.
most precise is going to be just having it automatically set to 9 decimal places, so the shift equal 9, and it'll stay like that forever unless you change it, okay?
So, okay, so I have $1 million present value, 3.25 interest, 15 shift in, and then I do 49 input 60.
No. You've got to solve the payment first. If you don't solve the payment first, the calculator has no clue what you're doing,
Gotcha.
okay? Okay. Now, another question.
Wait, why is the interest that? I think that's not the interest. I think it's the
That's-
principal.
I asked for the principal,
Oh, okay, well that makes sense.
okay?
For a day.
All right, now, what if I were to ask you something like, all right, I want to know the total amount of interest over the lifetime of this loan?
1 through 72.
What, I'm sorry?
1 through 72.
No. The life of the loan is how many years?
15.
1 through 6.
15.
Ah,
180.
180. So in other words, 15 years times 12 is 180 total payments, correct? So the life of the loan would be 180 payments. So if I want to know the total interest paid over the life of the loan, it's going to be 1 input, 180, shift, amortize, equal, okay? So you're going to get 1 million, obviously, as the amount of principal, but we don't care about that. That's not what we asked for. Hit equal again, and you're going to get 264,000. Oops, 803.78. So just think about this for a moment. All right, so for a 15-year loan, what we're basically saying, for a $1 million loan, $264,000 worth of the payments went directly just toward principal. I'm sorry, just toward interest, okay? So doing the simple math, without even using a calculator, what percentage really are we paying roughly in interest costs?
26.4.
Yeah, over 26%, okay? All right, so of the principal amount, we're paying 26% of that in interest, but now that's not really of the whole loan, because we're actually paying in total payments 1 million plus the principal. Then that would be the total amount of the payments. Then 26 or 264 divided by that amount would give us, well, really what percentage overall we're paying in interest. But you get the general idea, yes?
Yep.
Okay. Now, any questions up to this point? Now, here's the thing. We can also, what I was trying to illustrate with this is the beauty of the calculator is we can put in any 2 reference points during the loan and get the information, extract the information for those periods of time. So if we only wanted to know a specific period, just give me a number between 1 and 180.
179.
179, okay? So 179 would basically be, okay, what is, if we were to say 179, input 179, what that would do is it would extract the information only for month number 179, okay? Of the principal amount paid and the interest paid just during that month, and then the balance at the end of month 179, okay?
is the calculator compounding that premium?
Yes.
Okay,
No, it's taking all that into consideration,
okay, so that is compounding?
yeah,
Okay,
on a monthly basis.
right, okay.
All right? So, once again, it would be very fair to sort of say, to ask you, okay, I want to know the total principal during any particular year. I want to know the total interest during a particular month. I want to know the balance at the end of a particular month or a particular year. Does everybody follow that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay? We good up to this point? Yes? Okay. So let's do this. Let's switch over to our good friend Excel.
Not that good. Embedded in my skull. I was trying to build that Excel spreadsheet beforehand. I just kept watching that line and realized slowly and like building it and building out. It was brutal, but so much time. And literally the tech was like, it's only been roughly 40 minutes since we started this. It took 53 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then we wanted to just go faster. Right.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to just construct a basic little amortization schedule. So, first thing that we probably want to do, just go ahead and kind of what we did over here. Let's just say our loan amount, our interest rate, our term, or loan amortization term. Okay, and I'm not going to get super fancy here, so we're just going to put in this case, we have $1 million. We have an interest rate of 0.0325, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And our term was for 15 years. All right. So just to kind of clean this up a little bit, I'm going to obviously go in and make that a dollar amount, just by clicking on the dollar symbol. I'm going to change the interest rate to just a %, kick out the decimals a couple of places, and then leave the loan amortization term alone. All right. Then calculate the monthly payment. I'm assuming this is all, once again, super basic because obviously Sam McGill has, I'm sure, gotten through all of this with you guys. All right. So, monthly payment, we're going to start off there with the interest rate. So in this case, it's going to be the 3.25, but we've got to do what to it? We've got to adjust it for being monthly, so we've got to divide it by 12. And then we have the number of periods, and we've got to adjust that because it's monthly, multiply it by 12. All right. And then for the loan amount, that's our present value, and then close parentheses. So we should end up now with the $7,026.69. I'll put that back up here just so you can kind of see it real quick.
So that's for monthly compounding?
Correct.
That we divide the annual APR?
Correct.
And we're accounting for that by changing it to 12.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay? Because Excel is a little bit different. That's why I wanted to kind of work it in Excel real quick just to kind of show you, highlight a few of those little differences. Okay, so over here, we'll put our period number. And then here, beginning balance. Here, our payment amount. Here, interest paid. Principal repaid, and then ending balance. Okay. Okay, so no different than what we did previously. All right. Now we start off with period 1, and everybody has a different way of sort of handling this in terms of kind of copying down. What I tend to do, I'm not saying it's the best way, I'm just saying this is the way that I sort of do it, is for the following cells, I will take the cell right below it and we'll say plus the cell above it plus 1. And then once I've done that, then I will copy that cell down, however far we want to copy it. And then automatically, obviously, will then populate it forward.
What does the plus before AA do?
Yeah, you don't, well, okay, you don't have to do that. You could actually leave that out and just do equal AA plus 1. Once again, just.
So why did you put it, like, what is your thought
I
process?
I have a tendency to always, because before every number, there has to be an operator, so whether you put it as an equal or you put it in a plus, and my tendency is to go to the plus, okay? You could always use equal as well, all right? Okay, our beginning balance, in this case, is going to be a fixed cell reference up to the $1 million. So in my case, if you use the same cells I did, it'll be cell D2, all right? So we've got that. All right, the payment amount, same thing. We'll cell reference the payment cell. Okay. Now then, for the interest paid, this is where we kind of go back to, or at least I do, the basic math of how do we get to that number. All right. Well, as I showed you earlier, you're going to take basically the beginning balance, then you're going to multiply that by the interest rate. But in this case, what we've also got to do is we've got to divide that interest rate by 12. It's now a monthly interest rate. And so there we get the 2708.33. Okay, so once again, pop that up just so you can
But
see.
didn't we do that up top? Didn't we already divide by?
Yeah, but we're doing a separate calculation here. We're not utilizing the payment amount. We're using, in this case, the beginning balance. So we've got to make that adjustment. Okay, then in terms of the principal rebate, and now, once again, how people choose to do this is kind of, you know, their own method of the madness. What I tend to do is go back over here to the payment amount column and make that a positive number by basically putting a negative sign in front of it. So that way, whenever I do the math over here of taking the principal minus the interest to get the principal repaid, then it's just a simple subtraction. Okay?
Can you go back to the interest paid?
Yeah, the monthly payment thing formula, I missed it too.
Okay. Let me finish this one out real quick.
Okay.
All right. We're going to take, for the ending balance, we're going to take the beginning balance, and we're going to subtract out the principal repaid. All right. Then we're going to carry that number over. Okay. And then the payment amount, well, okay, let me stop there. All right. All right, so we're ready to go back. You said, okay, you needed the payment calculation, so I'll let you get that. Okay, got it?
Nope. So that's
You understand
interest
why you
divided by,
the interest
wait,
rate by
it's
12?
loan amount
That's
divided by
multiple
interest. No,
No, okay.
We already accounted for that. But because it's the full balance, you have to.
What do you reckon for that?
just trying to.
Okay, so right here it tells you what is actually happening. So we're saying, okay, we're calculating the payment using the rate. The rate is cell D3 interest rate. You're dividing that by 12, since this is an annual rate. In Excel, you have to tell it that it is a monthly rate, so you're dividing it by 12,
Okay.
comma, then the next item is the number of periods. So in this case, that's the 15 years, but you've got to multiply it by 12, once again, to let it know that's the number of months, okay, comma, then the present value or the loan amount of the $1 million is cell D2. We ignore the future value and the type. We don't need to mess with those. That's the reason why they're sort of in brackets. Close out the parentheses. Done. Okay? All right. Okay, what was the other one? Interest paid?
Actually,
Okay, principal repaid, all right? So principal repaid is nothing more than taking cell C8, which is the payment amount, minus the interest paid to get the principal repaid. Just like we did on the calculator of constructing the amortization schedule. So C8 minus D8.
That's why I have it, okay?
Okay. Are you matching up with the, are you using the same cells I'm using?
Yeah.
So cell C8 is your payment amount, correct? And cell D8 is your interest paid.
Yeah,
Those two numbers match.
they do.
And then you've typed exactly as I've got written here, equal C8 minus D8.
Yes, but my payment amount is negative.
That's, okay, that's why I said you need to fix that earlier. Okay, so the payment amount, you need to make that a positive number. So you gotta go over there and put a equal negative D5 to make it a positive number.
Can I see the payment monthly amount on file just real quick? I want to see if I have mistakes.
Just the beginning balance multiplied that, but then take monthly. Yeah. So it's the beginning balance, because again, that beginning balance is for the monthly term. Then you multiply
Yeah,
by
you're
the
just
monthly.
Okay, sorry.
Did Miguel not cover this?
No,
No, he covered.
we learned current events though. So we learned current events
He's
stuff.
covered a ton.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so once again, the interest paid. Okay, all right, let's move forward. All right, now, so, beginning of period 2, we've got our beginning balance, which is simply stealing the ending balance from over here in column F. All right, so that's nothing more than a cell reference to F8. All right, now then, for our payment amount column, all right, we're going to do something. We're going to go up here, and we're going to put dollar signs in front of D and 5. So go to cell C8 and change it to equal minus $D, $5. And I'm going to explain what we're doing.
You can also hit F4.
I'm sorry?
You can also
We're
hit.
locking it in, we're making it a static cell reference, meaning it does not change when we copy.
You can also hit F4 for that.
I know,
Like if you get a mortgage,
prefer to do it.
back every term, they're gonna set that term.
Okay,
You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna change.
so now if we copy down, it stays the same in terms of not changing where it's pulling that number from. So if you look at this, it's also still the same. But if you just copied it down without those dollar signs there, then it would copy the cell right below it, which was empty. Okay? All right. Interest paid. In this case, what we want to do is we want to keep the D3, which is the interest rate up here, fixed in location. So we're going to put the dollar sign in front of the D and the 3, but the beginning balance number we want to copy down, so we're going to leave it alone. Okay, everybody got it just like I've got it?
Yeah.
Okay, once again, it's B8 times $D, $3 divided by 12. Okay, now what you can do is you can copy that down. Okay, so it makes the adjustment for just the beginning balance piece. Okay, the principal repaid, we don't need to make any adjustments. We can just copy it down, and we can also just copy down the ending balance. So let's just go ahead and highlight both of those and drag them down one cell. Okay, so now we have done exactly what we had done over here. Okay, does everybody see that? Okay, now, with the wonderful magic of Excel, if we go highlight now columns B through F just for period 2. Don't highlight the period number, don't highlight period 1, just that row. Okay, everybody got it? Go over here on the right-hand side, get a hold with your mouse, drag down all the way to month 180, and release. Done. So there's your full amortization schedule for all 15 years. Okay?
If you had only done up to 180, you could have just double clicked it. And it would have just.
I know. Okay? All right? Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Okay, so all that does, just for the purposes of if you want to go in, now we can sort of test this to see if it's accurate. So let's just pick something kind of at random here. Let's take month 35. All right, you take month 35, so 35 input, 35 on the calculator. You still have everything in your calculator. And you hit shift, amortize equal, then you should end up with 47, 34, basically 29, 7, or basically 30 rounded. Hit equal again, you'll get to 22, 92, 39. Hit equal again, you should get to 841, 686, 87. Okay, make sense? So all this is doing is basically, it allows you to do it a lot quicker, but I think it's one of those sorts of things that going through what we went through, doing it by hand, then doing it with the amortization function on the calculator, and then doing it in Excel, so you've got 3 different ways that you can get the number, but I think starting with that, you hopefully have a better understanding of, okay, where the heck do those numbers come from? Okay, as opposed to, once again, it's just a bunch of numbers in a printout. All right, are we good? Yes? Okay, good. All right. Now, let us move forward. So am I going too slow, or I need to pick up the pace a little bit? Pick up the pace, okay, all right. So, let's see. Okay, let's talk about interest-only mortgages for a second. All right. Interest-only mortgages are pretty much the easiest, simplest, basic of all mortgages. And it's pretty much these sort of mortgages that have been around for quite some time, you know, hundreds of years, and you know, in terms of using this kind of a calculation. And the reason is because they're simple to understand, simple to use. Now, I know generationally, you guys are a lot different than I am in terms of what you grew up watching as a kid. But you know, I'm sure you know a couple of you that are close to my age, you remember watching on Saturdays the spaghetti westerns, and you always had, you know, in these western, you know, cowboy and Indian sort of western films, the situation of where you'd have the family farm that had been mortgaged by the evil banker, and ultimately at some point the banker forecloses on the property and takes possession of the property from the farmer or the rancher, okay? And you always, or at least in my mind, I always kind of wondered, how does this always happen? You know, or why does it always seem to happen so often in these movies that basically you've got the family farmer, the family rancher, that they've got this house, that they've settled, out in the middle of nowhere. They've gotten a loan on the property to build, a house, to, build a barn, to build, fences, and, end up getting livestock and planting things and all that sort of stuff. But they always end up in financial distress, okay? And they always end up in foreclosure. Well, one of the reasons this happens is, and even continues to happen to this day, is through the use of interest-only mortgages, okay? Because the problem with interest-only mortgages is you never, ever pay off the balance, okay, in terms of the payments that you are making to the lender. You always are going to have, in essence, a big balloon payment at the end of the mortgage. So take, for example, that family farmer or rancher or whatever, they go to a lender, and the lender tells them, okay, we'll give you $100,000 for 5 years at a 10% interest rate, and they're thinking, okay, fine. Very, very simple sort of loan. But at the end of that 5 years, you've got to pay back how much? $100,000. But each year, you're basically doing what? You're just paying the interest. You're paying $100,000 times 10%, or $10,000 a year in interest. And you do that for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. Okay? Same exact thing. Each year, once again, $10,000. So your total interest over that 5-year period was $50,000. Yes?
Yes.
But you never once paid down a single dollar of the original dollar amount of the $100,000. Does everybody get that? Okay? So here, just think about this. How many people, kind of given that scenario, let's say, once again, you're a farmer, you're a rancher, you've done what? Okay, you bought your land, okay, within that first year. You've built a house, you've built a barn, you put up some fences, you bought some livestock, you planted some crops. You've made all these improvements to that property using that original $100,000 loan. Yes? Okay, and then each year, kind of like clockwork, you go into the lender, you make your interest payment, of the $10,000 a year. Okay? That can still be on a monthly basis, whatever, that doesn't matter. The point is, you're going to make that payment of $10,000. And that's going to be based on the crops that you grow, based upon the livestock that ultimately you grow and sell, okay? But chances are, you're just simply saying, okay, I'm going to make those payments. And then in 5 years, you're not necessarily thinking, oh, I've got to pay back that original $100,000. The lender knows that, okay? So what in that case happens is the farmer says, I don't have $100,000 to pay you back. I've been paying you all of your interest payments for the past 5 years, so I'm due on the interest payments. But the lender says, no, but you owe me $100,000. Well, can you extend my loan? No. So what are you left with doing? Potentially selling off the family farm and ranch. Well, now the question is, back in those days, how much could you possibly sell that farm or ranch for? You may or may not be able to find a buyer to take it off your hands. And even if you did, you've invested all of that time and effort and energy of improving that property over that period of time. Okay? So what happened in many cases is the lender says, no, I'm not going to, basically let you refinance or get a new loan. I'm simply going to foreclose on the property, take possession of it, and then I'll dictate at some future time if I want to resell it to somebody else. Does that make sense?
So the banks know, they basically, I just know, how would you sign an interest-only mortgage? As a farmer, they just take advantage of the thing?
Absolutely. Why that would be a distant foreign concept. Lenders throughout history have been notorious for taking advantage of people. That's why we have so many laws dedicated to basically dealing with unscrupulous, lending tactics. Okay?
It's called regulation.
It's called regulation. Okay? Now, So my point is, in order for this farmer or for this rancher to have the money to be able to pay back the lender at the end of 5 years, what would they have to do? They would have to set aside, in essence, an extra $20,000 a year, literally stuffed in their mattress, so to speak, you know, in order to be able to accumulate a full extra $100,000 at the end of that 5-year period. You follow me?
Yes.
You know, and what's the likelihood of that? Probably zero. Okay? Now, what the lender could also do, you know, I mean, I gave kind of the extreme scenario. They come in and they do, okay, we're going to foreclose and we're going to take possession of the property. Well, the lender could say, okay, yeah, I'll extend the note, but you know what? That 10% interest you've been paying me, not enough. I want 15%, okay, for the next 5 years. All right? Well, then all of a sudden your payment, interest payment jumps up from $10,000 a year to $15,000 a year. More money for the lender. You don't want to walk away from the property because you don't want to lose your property. Okay, so you maybe stick with it for another, 5 years. But at the end of that 5 years, how much do you still owe? $100,000.
Hopefully at that point you learn that it's interest only.
You would hope, but it's beyond learning that. It's the ability to actually do something about it. And the ability to do something about it would mean that you still have to come up with that funding to pay down that loan from somewhere. Okay, that's the point. Because think about, even in today's environment, not just with interest-only loans, but with mortgages in general, what is the general mindset of not only the realtor community, but also kind of the lending community? It all comes down to how much can you afford to pay, and everybody wants to, in essence, maximize the amount that they borrow because they want to get as big of a house or as big of a property as they can possibly get on the dollar amount of income that they are currently generating. As opposed to saying, you know what, even though I can afford, let's say, a $500,000 house, maybe a $200,000 house is not such a bad thing. That way I've got a little bit of extra wiggle room to be able to, afford some other things to put into the house, But unfortunately, what happens in society is many people go to that extreme and just sort of say, what's the most I can possibly afford to get, and we're gonna, max it out, and then they end up a few years down the road, circumstances have changed, maybe they've lost their job, maybe they have unexpected expenses from something else, or maybe unexpected expenses from the house itself, unable to pay. Okay, make sense? So, getting back now to the interest-only mortgage, so these still exist, okay? You can actually, find these. And part of the reason why they still exist is to fulfill what I just talked about, and that is to allow a person to qualify for the most expensive property they can possibly qualify for because they're not making any sort of principal payments to reduce the balance.
Or it's also good if you are anticipating a value add play, right? Because then your payments are low and you can refinance.
If under perfect market conditions, you buy a property and everybody buys a property with this expectation that the value is only going to go up. And it does do that. The value does go up. And then at some point in the future, you have the financial discipline and knowledge and wherewithal to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to refinance the property into a normal mortgage, 3 or 4 or 5 years into the future, lock in a nice, low rate, I've got higher income, the property's worth more, everything is wonderful. Yes, that scenario makes sense. But
like your property though, because you forced the appreciation. You weren't waiting for it.
Well, you force it by renovation.
Renovation,
right.
Filling it, raising rents, etc.
Yeah. Now that's a little bit of a different scenario. That's more of an investment scenario as opposed to like what I was talking about here is more kind of from your owner-occupied kind of standpoint. On the commercial side, yeah, if you buy a severely undervalued property in the sense that you're acquiring it well below replacement cost, and you're able to then, benefit from a significant price appreciation, then yeah, sure, getting an interest-only, mortgage for, the first couple of years makes a lot of sense.
I was trying to figure out for the longest time when I was trying to learn about multifamily, why are people getting interest only? And then eventually it started to make sense, which is, forcing the appreciation and being able to refinance out of it.
Right. Okay? All right. Moving forward. Now, just to kind of twist this a little, or flip it around a little bit. So if I told you that your interest rate was 15%, and I told you that you had a 10-year interest-only mortgage, and I told you that your annual interest payment were, let's say, $30,000, with this interest-only mortgage, okay? That's all I would need to give you. Matter of fact, I've given you too much, okay? Because with an interest-only mortgage, the only two things that you would need to know to be able to calculate the value of the mortgage is the interest rate and the payment. The term is irrelevant for an interest-only mortgage to calculate if we're working backwards. Because here what I'm saying is, all right, our annual interest payment is $30,000, so that means if our interest rate is 15%,
It's 2
then that would mean our mortgage amount would be $200,000. Okay, just working backwards. Does that make sense? Okay. But you see what I'm saying? That once again, the term is irrelevant in an interest-only mortgage in terms of working at it from that angle, because whether it's 1 year or 100 years, you're still making interest payments of $30,000 a year. Okay? And if the interest rate is staying fixed, then this would be the value of the mortgage. Okay? All right, we good? All right.
So it doesn't obviously tell you when that has to be repaid, but the assumption is that you have to repay that whenever the term is gone.
Correct.
Gotcha. So again, the term is kind of irrelevant.
Your only options with an interest-only mortgage is
No, I'm just saying, 'cause before we were answering this.
yeah, the only options that you have with an interest-only mortgage is, number one, you pay it off early. Okay, there may or may not be prepayment penalties associated with that, which we'll get into later. Or, if you pay it off at the end of the term, you've got to come up with the cash out of pocket to pay off that balance, or you've got to sell the property to come up with the cash to pay off that balance, or you've just got to go through foreclosure and let the bank take possession of it, and you hopefully walk away and deal with whatever issues in terms of your credit history being destroyed.
Gotcha.
Okay? All right?
But it's always going to be that the interest on that principal is paid completely.
Well,
Like, would people go in one where,
yeah, no,
where the balance is due before all the interest is paid?
now, theoretically, you could create your own, mortgage or payment schedule. In other words, you could go to the lender if they allowed it. In some cases, they do. In some cases, they don't in terms of early prepayment. Okay? So in this case, if you were to go to the lender and sort of say, okay, well, each year, I want to pay down $20,000 of the balance, and they allowed you to do that without penalty, then that would mean that the following year, yeah, your balance would be $80,000, meaning now that your payment would be $8,000, and so forth, so on. For each consecutive year would be obviously reducing the balance. But in many cases, that is not what happened. It was simply the mindset of, we're going to wait until the end of this, much like what Coles was sort of describing, that scenario of, I'm buying a property for investment purposes, I'm hoping that it's going to price appreciate, and therefore that lump sum that I have to pay at the end is going to be covered by refinancing or selling the property. Okay? Make sense? Okay. Okay. Oh, good time to talk about that. All right.
again, for that last equation, the interest only mortgage, we're just literally just dividing the payment by the interest rate.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Okay. But now, of course, I may complicate it up a little bit and say, well, what if it's a monthly payment?
Oh,
You
well,
have to
just
divide.
multiply it by 12 and then.
Then divide it by, yeah.
Which you may not complicate it.
You never know.
Oh.
Okay,
Suspense.
all right. Another topic is a constant amortization mortgage or constant amortization loan. Now, this is not the same as a constant payment mortgage. The constant payment mortgage is the mortgage that's all you've ever really heard about, other than what we just talked about with the interest-only mortgage. The constant payment mortgage is where the payment is the same every single month, every single year, okay, kind of thing. A constant amortization mortgage is one where you pay off potentially an equal amount of the principal or the original loan amount each period or each year. For example, let's just say, kind of like our previous example, we have a $100,000 loan, 5-year term, and let's say it's a constant amortization mortgage at 10%. Okay, well, what that would mean is, okay, if we've got period 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all right, our beginning balance here would be $100,000, all right, and our payment amount, interest, principal, and ending balance. Okay, so here what we would sort of start with, we would not calculate the payment initially. Okay, we would calculate the interest paid. So the interest paid, like on our interest-only mortgage, would be $10,000 on the original $100,000. Okay, but the principal, this is where we would say, okay, kind of what we were sort of talking about, you have to put a certain dollar amount each year into the mattress, so to speak. Well, to pay off a $100,000 loan over 5 years, you would have to put $20,000 a year in principal into the mattress, so to speak. Or in this case, pay to the lender. So here, we just sort of go down the page in the principal column and put in $20,000 a year. An equal amount each year. Thus, constant amortization, meaning we're paying down an equal amount of the principal amount each year, so that over that 5 years, we have paid off the $100,000. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, then, once we've kind of done that, then we kind of have to go back and sort of say, all right, we kind of work backwards, so to speak. Well, if we paid this much in interest and this much in principal, what would that mean our first payment was?
30,000.
Oops. Yeah, yes, that is correct. Okay, and then what does it mean our ending balance would be?
80 grand.
80. Wonderful, you guys are getting it. All right, so over here, 80,000.
Payment doesn't stay the same.
Yes, it does. Well, no, it doesn't.
It's 28 grand.
So the payment now is going to be based on the 80,000. So 80,000 times 10% is going to be 8,000. Does everybody follow that? Okay. Now our payment has gone down to 28,000. And then our balance is 60,000. Now, if you kind of follow the logic train there, what you should be able to do is pretty much, you're seeing what the balance is doing. It's just going down by $20,000 a year.
Wouldn't it be, no,
Oops, that'll be 0. Okay, which also means our beginning balance over here is going down as well. Okay, now, What is changing, though, in terms of how we sort of do the calculations, is what is going to be the interest and the payment each year. So the interest now for the third year is going to be what?
$6,000.
For the fourth year? For the fifth year?
Oh, no, 2,000.
Okay, so I sort of see what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, and then now then the payment, 26,000, 24,000, and 22,000. Okay, so if we wanted to sort of calculate up, unfortunately there's no easy way to do this other than add them up. The 30 plus 28 plus 26 plus 24 plus 22. So $130,000 total in payments. So that would mean, more than likely, if we did our math right, we should have $30,000 in interest that was paid over the course of that mortgage. Does that make sense, everybody? Yes or no? Now, in your mind, what would be sort of the advantage of this sort of mortgage?
Your principal.
Okay, so it pays off the mortgage. It sort of pays it off in equal chunks, okay? So that you know literally from 1 year to the next, you know, what you're going to owe, because it's a nice, in this case, a nice round number. Okay, what else?
The money's less expensive.
I'm sorry?
The money is less expensive.
Possibly. I mean, we have to sort of check it out with an amortization schedule doing along with similar conditions with a constant payment mortgage. But one thing that is also beneficial here, that's always going to be the case with a constant amortization mortgage, is what about your payment amount?
Yeah, it's
It keeps
decreasing.
going down.
It goes down. So it gets better as time goes on, okay? Because you pay down more and more of the note. You start out with a larger than normal payment, but you end up with a substantially smaller payment at the end, okay?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, anybody else over here? Other comments? I'm sorry?
You looks like you pay less than interest.
Maybe, let's just find out, okay? Let's do the exact, actually, let's do this. I want you to put in your calculator for a normal mortgage, one payment per year, $100,000, 5 years, 10%. And I want you to use the amortization functions to see how they differ for a traditional mortgage versus this one.
5 year, 10%, you said?
Just like it's up here, 5 years, 10%,
Calculated monthly or yearly?
yearly.
So we would do one input one,
One?
two input two.
Correct, or just one input 5. That's all I asked for is to compare it overall.
Ah.
I got higher interest.
No, it's not as good.
That's why I wanted you to calculate. Okay, so you put in 100,000, 5 years, 10%. Start out, calculate, oops, yellow, yeah, calculate the payment. And one input, 5, shift, amortize, equal. Okay, let's see what we get. $26,379.75 as our payment. Oops. 100,000 as our principal. 31,898 as our interest, and then our balance will be 0. Okay, so let's just sort of compare. Our monthly payment, constant amortization mortgage, constant payment mortgage, normal mortgage would be $26,379. Whereas you can see here that with the constant amortization mortgage, yeah, it's going to be more initially, but then it's going to drop down over time. Now, if you were to just simply say, okay, well, let's just take an average of this and take 130,000 divided by 5, it'd be 26,000 even versus $26,379. So just in terms of raw dollars, cash outflow, this would be the better deal. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. What I said was, if this is our annual payment for the regular mortgage, these are our payments for the constant amortization mortgage. If you simply take this, so that's for 5 years, you divide that by 5, you get 26,000 even. That is 20. If you're paying $26,000 a year versus paying $26,379, which is a better deal? Okay, on average. Okay. Now, in terms of interest, here with the normal mortgage, we paid a total of $31,898 in interest. Here, we paid only a total of $30,000 in interest. Okay? So under this scenario, with this interest rate, with this term, it happens to be the better deal for the constant amortization mortgage. Now, part of the reason for that, if you sort of think about this logically,
Paying down the balance.
you're paying down the balance a lot quicker. Okay? And this is much the same sort of thing that you may or may not have ever heard, that like at the very beginning of like a normal mortgage, whether it's a home mortgage or a commercial mortgage, one of the best things that you can do is pay down that balance early on in the mortgage, because then that will potentially save you a significant amount of interest, over the subsequent years. And so a common strategy that a lot of people, have used is to take whatever tax rebate that maybe they receive, from the mortgage, and then use that money to plow in to basically paying down the balance that much more. And so for maybe a traditional 30-year mortgage, by doing that, maybe every year, you might convert it from a 30-year mortgage to maybe like a 17, 18-year, depending on what the interest rate is and that sort of thing, but you can shave off maybe a good 10 plus years off of the mortgage just by making those extra principal payments on a regular basis. Does that make sense? Okay, there you go. All right. Does this make sense? Yep.
How would you, so the calculator makes sense for the normal mortgage, how would you do that one on the calculator? Can't? That's gonna be fun on the quiz.
So the question was, how do you do all of this on the calculator? You do it by hand. Okay? There is no function on the calculator to do a constant amortization mortgage. Okay? All right? Yep.
Are we going over a balloon or not?
Yes, we are. Okay. All right, are we good? Okay. Okie dokie. Let's see. Okay, so basically, for the most part, in the list of the sort of the quiz questions and the things I gave you, number 2 and number 6 are in essence the same thing. Okay, they're slightly different, but they're really the same thing. And and that was sort of what prompted, I think, Brian's question is, okay, how do we go about calculating the loan balance or the balloon payment, that sort of thing, which we've already done, but we'll do another example. So in this case, we want the loan to be monthly or annual?
Monthly.
Okay, monthly. 12 payments per year. Okay.
We try it before you before you give us the inputs.
Okay. All right. What do you want the loan amount to be?
You said what questions? Number 1 and what?
No, number like 2 and 6.
2 and 6.
In other words, fully amortizing loan with a balloon payment and computing loan balance. They're the same thing.
Okay.
In essence. Okay. All right. In terms of calculations. All right. So give me a loan amount.
Can we stick to the same data?
Sure. What we
2.5 million.
here. Give me 2.5 million is the
Yes.
loan amount. Okay. 2.5 million is our loan amount. Okay. What about our interest rate?
3 1/4.
7.4.
Sure.
Okay, 7.4% interest rate. Okay, what's our term?
6 years.
Yeah, let's make it longer.
6.5.
I already wrote 6.
Let's make the loan term something like 20 years. Okay, when are we gonna pay off the loan?
5 years.
Say 5 years.
Okay, so stop right there. I have no understanding of why the hell we give 20-year or 30-year, and then we're like, we'll pay it off in 5. It's like, so it's not a 30-year, it's 5.
Because you get the
Well, it is and it
lower
isn't.
interest rate of-
No, it's amortized over
It's
that
amortized.
time.
It makes zero sense to me. Like, that is so
Okay.
hard of a concept.
Okay, let me then soften the concept.
It's an investment.
All right, here's what happens, or here's what traditionally has happened with commercial real estate loans. With commercial real estate loans, most commercial banks say, we don't want to hold loans on our portfolio for longer than 5 years. And the reason for that, traditionally, has been for interest rate risk, okay? The interest rates could go way up, they could go way down, so we want to limit our interest rate risk. And this is a holdover, literally from 30, 40, 50, years ago, of commercial loans being kind of 5 years in duration. And so what they would do is they would say, okay, we're going to make you a loan, but you're going to pay it off at the end of 5 years, but we're going to soften the payment to where the payment is going to be based as if it's a 15-year loan, okay? But you still have to pay it off at the end of 5 years, all right?
Gotcha.
So in other words, your monthly payment is going to be less,
But then
but
again,
you're going to have this
at the
balloon
very
payment
end. Gotcha.
at the end, or bullet payment, or whatever you want to call it, at the end of that 5-year period.
Okay.
Meaning you still owe, technically, 10 years on the mortgage, but now here's what will
But
happen.
it's due in that 5th
But
year.
it's during that 5th year.
Gotcha.
But this is also the beauty of setting it up that way, and part of the reason why they haven't changed it is because those commercial lenders are saying, you know what? If we continue doing this, guess what we can do? We can charge a whole new set of loan origination fees
At year 6.
at year 6, and then again, basically at year 11.
But why,
Okay.
but if you just paid it off in year 5, why does there have to be any origination fees?
You're not going to pay it off, it's a refinance.
You're not going to pay it off.
Yeah,
You're
I
going to
understand.
refinance.
But you just said there was one final balloon payment.
There is.
That doesn't pay it off?
The goal isn't to pay it off, the goal is to
Okay,
get
I'm
new
wrong.
debt.
there's a lot of
Okay,
accounting
wait, one more time, to make
aspects
sure-
of
okay.
it too.
All right,
It's not just one.
you borrow the $100,000 from me,
Yes.
or whatever the dollar amount is. So let's keep it the $100,000 because it's an easier number to work with. Okay, you borrow $100,000 from me. Okay, you make payments over 5 years, and you owe me now. I'm just going to make up a number, $75,000. Let's say at the end of 5 years. Okay, so you have the choice at the end of that 5 years as the borrower. Do I write a check to the lender for $75,000,
Or do you refinance?
or do I sell the property, pay off
To
the
get
lender?
that, yeah. To get the
Or do I basically default on the mortgage? The lender walks away with the property and I owe nothing because in essence I've basically defaulted on the mortgage. Or I choose to refinance either with that lender or a new lender.
Right.
Okay? But you have to set that up in advance of that final payment. So probably middle of year 5, you're scouting around for, okay, I need to find a lender to refinance this for me for either another 15 years or for just 10 years or for some other term that you choose on your own. But maybe if you stick with the same lender, they'll just say, okay, we will refinance it for another 5 years with a 15-year amortization, or we'll finance it over 5 years, keep your payments the same with a 10-year amortization. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now.
So they
but-
expect you not to pay it? Like, that just sounds crazy. Like,
No,
here's a
you're-
balloon
You're
payment.
not getting the picture. How do lenders make money? 2 ways, actually 3 ways. They make money off of the interest that they charge you on the loan.
Correct.
They make money, a lot of money, off of loan origination fees.
Gotcha.
Okay, so they can get, in some cases, 3 to 5% of the loan amount up front as a loan origination fee.
Gotcha.
And that is big time money to them in terms of giving them cash flow for their operations, okay? They can also make money off of, if you pay the loan off early, they're going to charge you a prepayment penalty, okay? So if you pay it off before the end of that 5 years, they're going to say, we want more money because, in essence, you're paying it off early and depriving us of this money that you had previously promised us. They also can make money off of the servicing of the loan. So every month you write a check to the lender, and the lender says, you know what, I need $150 to cash your check and post it to your account, okay, as a servicing fee. All right, and you're saying, what? Well, once again, with commercial loans, that's all perfectly accepted practice. Residential loans, not so much. But with commercial loans, it's all buyer beware, okay? And so what they do is they figure out this amazing concoction of combining those different ingredients into, in essence, turning what appears to be a street value of a 5% interest rate into a real effective borrowing rate of maybe double that.
Right.
Because they have embedded all of these different fees and charges into it. But the thing is, the average person on the street has no freaking clue how to make those adjustments to sort of say, this is not really a 5% loan,
right.
It's really a 10% loan. Does that make sense?
It does. That was a good explanation.
That is, for if nothing else, is the value of your $30,000+ education and MSRED program is understanding that component piece to avoid having to pay more than you ordinarily would for those loans. Because every lender is a retailer. And I've said that over and over again, that this lender may have a simple 5% interest rate loan with no hidden fees, no hidden charges, nothing unusual. But this lender is saying, I'm going to charge you 5% as a loan origination fee plus a 5% interest rate. And this one tacks on a prepayment penalty of another 5%. And this one tacks on a $500 monthly servicing fee. Okay?
Shop around.
Yeah.
Plus $1,500 in underwriting fee.
The next question is going to be why I know that why would an investor use this loan?
Why would what?
Why would an investor?
Like a developer or on our side of the transaction
Right.
want to use this loan.
In what way?
Like, for instance, you're saying that, okay, for 5 years, who's asking why would somebody do the loan? But why would a commercial investor or a developer use this loan?
It's the only one you have available to you. It's the only option you have
There's
available.
no benefits of calculating the right way or like your exit strategy for the property you're buying to see when you're going to save money.
Well, yeah, you can try, but my point being is most lenders, commercial lenders, are going to follow the same methodology. They're going to use 5-year balloon notes. Is that what you're asking? I guess I'm
What I'm
confused.
saying is that, like, the finance vehicle, so why, okay, if I have other financial vehicles that I could use to do my project, right? What's the benefit of me picking that one compared to another financial?
Cost of borrowing?
Cost of borrowing, so the lender shield or the borrower shield. But what
Right.
I'm saying is that there is a tactic, there's a science to this to say if I'm only be in this project for 5 or 10 years,
Sure.
I'm going to look at what lenders can give me the most benefit
Sure.
on my monthly
Sure.
payment for me to see
Precisely.
my project. Yeah.
No, I would agree
That's what I was
completely.
trying to say. is
Yeah,
that-
no, and that's the whole piece of this, is that you've got to understand enough about how this is calculated to understand what is that lender's yield, what is that effective cost of borrowing, so that you can hopefully get the best deal that you can possibly get. But see, the issue is, it's not even just the calculations, okay? What we've talked about up to this point is, this part of it conceptually in terms of calculations. There's a whole other angle to this, and that is those commercial lenders, in addition to the different fees and charges and whatever else, they can also embed within those loans other requirements that you have to perform on either a monthly, quarterly, or annual basis. You say, what are you talking about? With commercial loans, they could very easily say, property must be kept at 85% occupancy or higher. Failure to do so will automatically trigger a technical default in the loan, meaning that lender has the ability to come in and start managing that property. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Borrower must disclose on a monthly basis an operating statement of the property showing all sources of income, all expenses that have been made on this property, and if they fail to do so, once again, they are in technical default of the loan. Lender can jump in, potentially seize control of the property, okay? Not actual, I'm being very careful with my word choice here. When I say default, I'm saying in this case a technical default, not an actual default. An actual default is whenever you stop paying. A technical default is whenever you violate some sort of provision of the loan documents.
How long would it take for them to?
Depends on the lender.
Yeah.
Every lender is different.
Even if like you didn't, what if there was some type of electronic issue where like it didn't go through or?
Let me put it this way, and this is a horrible sort it's lenders have a mentality that's made up of 3 words: just pay me. Okay, that's all they care about.
I've also heard that banks don't want to own properties.
As a general rule, that is true, but if the property is such that there's an upside to taking possession of it and potentially repositioning it by the lender, you better bet they're going to take advantage of it. Okay? Now, if it's something that, once again, is a property that is, horrible with respect to, the income generation and the upside potential, yeah, they probably are, just going to say, we don't really want to mess with that, because then we would be responsible then for dealing with the ongoing maintenance, repairs, whatever else. But if it's a property that is in probably good working order and there's just some sort of a technical default associated with the property, or actual default, as I said, at the end of the day, the lender is doing whatever they can to get their money back and try to maximize their return. Now, finishing on with my scenario of sort of painting this picture of the lender demanding all of this extra information from the borrower on a regular basis, the reason why they do that is to minimize their risk as the lender. Because they're saying, if I have more information as the lender in my possession, then I hopefully can know what is about to happen to that property, that if it's going to go potentially into default. And I don't want the property to go into default, and so therefore, I as a lender may be able to step in and prevent it from going into default. Okay? Now, my point with that is, not all lenders will go to that extreme. But let's just say I'm a lender, and I take that sort of big brother approach, all right? That I want all this information from you as the borrower on a regular, consistent basis coming into me, telling me what your occupancy rate is, telling me what all your income and expenses are, and I want you to provide that to me on a regular basis. And then I have a whole team of people, a surveillance team, sounds like what it is, the surveillance team that looks at that information on a regular, consistent basis and says, point out any anomalies in that information. And what I mean by that is that of all these properties that we basically are servicing as a lender, show me any sort of anomalies that exist within those properties in terms of, has their income gone down significantly? Has their expenses gone up significantly? And if so, flag those. And then we want to take a closer look at what's really going on with that property, maybe even sending out someone to the property to investigate what actually is taking place. And then if, through that investigation, they find that some sort of violation has taken place of the loan documents, then the lender can step in and say, hey, we're going to take control of this and take it away from you in terms of having control. Does that make sense? But now, here's the point. You're saying, why on earth would I, as a developer, agree to such terms from me as a lender, the big brother lender, versus, let's say, Jim here is the total old school lender that basically, I don't care what you do, just pay me every month, and as long as I get my monthly check, I don't care. Okay? Those are the two extremes. But here's the difference. I'm willing to give you a substantially lower interest rate for providing me with all that information. He's not. So his interest rate might be, let's say, 7%, mine might be 5%. Okay? So you're saying, I'm willing to accept the brain damage that I've got to endure to provide all of that extra information to me on a regular, consistent basis because I'm getting a lower interest rate. And under normal operating circumstances, I'm the better deal. But if something potentially starts to blow up, I may not be the better deal. He might have been the better deal.
There's definitely some, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's some type of like, if something does blow up, they're not ready there, like waiting to like steal your property. Like if the roof, you know, whatever, and you have CapEx.
It depends on the lender. And I'm not trying to be, you know, just overly whatever, you know, with that statement, but it does depend on the lender. Because once again, you're thinking about lenders in terms, or many people are thinking about lenders in terms of Bank of America, Wells Fargo, you know, traditional commercial banks. Fred Forgy, can be a lender, okay? Some wealthy rock star can be a lender. Some, you know, wealthy pro football player can be a lender.
Insurance companies.
You know, insurance companies. So you've got to sort of put away the notions and the constrictions of a traditional commercial bank as being your lender, okay? Because what, you know, in many cases can happen is you just have high net worth individuals that are going through an intermediary like their CPA to actually give out loans on a property, but then placing all these potentially ridiculous constrictions on the loan. Or you may have very complex financial instruments like commercial mortgage-backed securities that are being issued that have a whole layer of additional restrictions. They give you cheap capital, but they have a whole lot of restrictions, okay? Huge prepayment penalties and a number of other things. So that's what I'm saying. Every lender is different, okay?
And if you're doing if you're building from the ground up, and you've got construction going on, you're gonna have goals that you have to meet.
Yeah, and that's gonna be a perfect segue into our construction loan in about 5 minutes, okay? Do we need to take a quick break or not?
It's really 1:45.
Okay, do you want to take a break or do you want to keep going?
Break.
Okay, 5-minute break.
Go back an hour.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll come back when that clock says 9:45. I think it's tomorrow.
Do we get an extra?
Last year. It helped. Hearing it from the second time. So you guys did this by hand, with the amortization by period and filled the okay, so just practice the amortization. Okay, good. I'm up to date.
Okay, John?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're still going a little bit.
Yes. We got sidetracked. Not that we're not going to cover that, because we are going to cover that, but it just we're jumping a little bit ahead.
That's very practical. Very little for mortgage. See this more and more every day.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Alex, here's your.
Oh, thank you.
You know what I started doing? I started watching your classes from last year before I came to this one. And it helps a ton. So hearing it for the second time. What would you say is the deadline for like
Do the 12 one?
so we take class 4.
Yep.
And then that week is where you would.
If you're going to take the midterm, you just schedule it.
So, all right. And it's like typical, like your office type of deal.
How did you do? Well, how are you doing?
Fine.
Basically, it's,
Last one I got a 95.
it's just a trend and you just got a trend. Yeah. So it's still an Android, I want to go heavy on the upside, on the front side, so that towards the back off the way.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do good on the quizzes, it's fine.
The more, the better you do, consistently, the better you are.
The first quiz I didn't do that well because I came in late and I didn't read the syllabus. So I didn't know it was a quiz. So I was just like sitting in the back, like.
That was the first thing everybody was talking about.
Huh?
That was the first thing everybody was talking about. That
I
there was
just wasn't. I
quiz
just was.
every week.
I didn't think about it. But then the second one, I paid attention. I got an 85.
I got a 70.
The last one.
That I complicated.
I
studied. You know why? I studied. Like this, I should do it.
I don't know how I did. Okay, because I thought I wanted to do it, but this one, yeah, we already did computing principal and interest and loan is super easy. So already question 4, 5, and 6 will be easy.
Repetitive.
Number 1 will be easy. Huh?
It's repetitive though.
Yeah.
We do the same thing, we just do it a different way.
Exactly. So already you got 50% of this side. Pretty easy.
That's for today.
And then we, the only thing.
You didn't do the negative amortization.
We haven't done negative, we
Nor the-
haven't done reverse mortgage or construction loan. Wait, what about the fully amortizing loan with the balloon fee?
We did that already.
That's what isn't that what he's
What is
doing
that?
now? He's getting ready to do, the balloon payment? He said 2 and 6.
Yeah.
I guess what he's gonna be doing.
Technically, that's just finding out what no, that's like the farmer one, right?
What's left
That's what I was
over?
about to say, technically, that was the one that we did before that.
Yeah, that's like the first thing we did.
Remember when he said about interest only loans and balloon payments?
Yeah, but interest only loan would be,
No, but that's technically the same thing, it's just calculated in a different way. Do the
yeah,
same
it's
thing.
technically the same thing. If you're saying like a 5-year period, what is your balance at the end? That's what you would have to pay,
Correct.
right? So it doesn't really, balloon payment would just mean you have to pay the remaining balance.
Only one I'm
Every
saying
5
was
years from now.
the
Well, whatever,
reverse
final
year,
question,
but
when you had like all like the cash flows, that was so much. Huh?
Yeah, I don't know, but my notes on it were like so bad.
Yeah, exactly. It was like last second, notes
I
were
mean,
not
it's probably
there.
simpler than mortgage constant. Did we do that one?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was easy. Yeah, that one. That one's where we don't even have to use the calculator.
But our count is 3.
What, for this one?
No, because he made it easy.
That's what I did.
He made it easy though. Well, he said also you could yours
I didn't like-
Yeah, but like you write it down like the way.
Yeah, I'm like 85. I don't know why. Yeah, exactly. At one point, I was like, I need to wake up early. Like, it's ridiculous.
I did this.
You know how we did those tables?
Yeah, no, I did. Actually, at one point, I was like, I've spent so many hours on this, and once this is come fast, and I have to feel like I'm farther ahead than other people. Like, this is good enough for
What's
me.
my question? What do you got?
Because every, those 2 boxes.
I still like, because you know the TV functions where like outline a present value, like I cannot get that to like line up, yeah. Like, because in his video, they match the same. But in mine, it's like they're decreasing instead of increasing.
You guys are
I don't know, like, I don't even care.
Because you already know the principal payments, so that's gonna be constant. Everything else
Right,
goes
that's
up
what I'm
to
saying. I
that.
don't understand this concept of what people are able to do for class. Like, if you all 4 hours, it makes sense. Like, at least why? Just tell them. Mr. Professor, sorry, I spent 5 hours of my week listening to school that would be right, no,
Remember how you added it up?
I started.
yeah, no, there's no way. Right, there's no way.
One way too, you can go 25, 25.
And it was like 3 chapters of textbooks on it. And I'm like, you really expect me to add that to my list of like shit?
One more time?
Yeah, that's why I did it. So I was like, I'm just gonna focus on the assignment.
It's next week, so basically it's next week.
It depends. on the third and line, which happened first.
How much actually
And then also whether or not
Yeah,
the larger
Yeah, but that, no,
would
but
support
that
the
one
positions.
we did, I wrote it down. That one-
Okay. We got like 4 topics left, should go, most of them kind of go quickly, this one should go pretty quickly. All right, so in terms of calculating sort of outstanding loan balance, that sort of thing, all right. So in this case, $2.5 million loan, 7.4% interest rate, 20-year amortization period, 5-year term, okay? In terms of the payoff. Okay, everybody cool with that, yes or no?
Cool.
Chase?
Cool as a cucumber.
Okay, good.
What, just real quick, what subject with this question?
This is the payoff amount.
So balloon payment.
Yeah. Okay. So, you already got it, or do we need to?
No, so the present value, 7.4, interest rate, and then.
Do you have to calculate the payment?
Yes. The reason is the calculator needs to fulfill all of the elements of the equation in order to be able to then kind of extract from that the relevant pieces of information. Okay, so let's start off. Let's get the payment. Okay, yeah, $19,987.24. Okay, everybody good with that? All right, so now what we want to know is what is the balance of the loan at the end of 5 years? So what are we going to do?
1 through 5.
What?
1 through 5.
Nope.
Oh, 5, input 5?
Nope.
1 input 60.
60.
One
It's
input.
monthly.
Okay.
Okay?
So if you put in 60 and put 60, wouldn't it still tell you the same
Yes, it will.
balance? Woo!
There you go, because you're only solving for the balance.
Okay.
Look at you, Chase.
Extra
Overachiever. Okay, so we just do the equal, 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 get our balance.
That's 3.6. What you got?
That's the payment, that's the balloon payment, right?
That is correct.
Ernie?
So that's our balloon payment, or our ending balance.
Because the balloon payment is just paying the rest of the loan off.
Yes.
After the 5 years.
And the reason it's called a balloon payment is because basically it's blown up and you need to pop it.
So 5-year balloon payment.
Yeah. Okay, are we good? Yes, no? Okay, so that's all you need to know about that. All right, now we can move on to construction loans, the negative amortization loans, and reverse mortgages, and when we're ready for the quizzing.
The quizzing?
The quizzing.
Quizzing? Is that supposed to make it less terrifying?
Yes.
Okay. You're going to capitalize on that.
All right, so let's start with construction loans. All right, so here's the thing about construction loans. Basically, construction loans work pretty much the same way that credit card cash advances work. All right? So I'm going to let that resonate in your head for just a second. All right?
High interest rate.
Say that again.
Let him marinate.
Construction loans pretty much work the same way that cash advances on credit cards do. Okay? In that, you don't owe anything until you start borrowing. Okay? But you don't inherently borrow all that you're going to borrow at one time. You borrow sort of incrementally over time. Much like if you have a credit card, you charge a bunch of different things over the month. And then the next month, you charge a bunch of other things the following month, and so forth, so on. And what ends up happening is you end up with this accumulated balance at the end of the month that you then have to pay interest on, and so forth, and so on. Does that make sense, conceptually? Okay? Now, here's a way to also put this into your head. Let's say I want to go build a house or a small commercial building. Doesn't really matter. I want to go build a property. And so I go to the lender, I say, all right, I own the land free and clear, okay? I'm bringing that into the deal, and you know, maybe it's family land, doesn't really matter, won it in a lottery, won it in a poker game, I have land, all right? So I go into the lender, I've got this land, I say I want to build a $100,000 structure on this land. So I want to get a construction loan, okay? So this is the part that you have to kind of understand that's different than a normal mortgage. Because with a construction loan, you don't want, really, you don't, the lender to just hand you, here's $100,000, go forth and build. That's not what you want to have happen. Because if you do that, and you get that entire $100,000 up front, you start paying interest on all of that immediately at the time you get it, okay? Whereas with a construction loan, what happens is you go in and say, okay, I want to build this $100,000 structure, and the lender says, okay, good. So bring me your receipts every month, and when you bring them your receipts for whatever you've done during that month in terms of, okay, the first month you clear the land. So you have to pay a contractor for a bulldozer to get out there and clear the land, all right? The next month you have basically concrete slab poured. The next month you start framing. The next month you start basically putting in, you know, other building systems. The next month you do, you know, basically sheetrocking. The next month, you know, so forth, so on. Each period of time is tied to a specific part of that construction process, okay? And the payments that you make are going to be made to these different either subcontractors or a general contractor, okay? But we're sort of making the assumption that you're sort of serving as the general contractor in this case in getting this construction loan. So what happens is that first month you need to do a $10,000 draw, and that's what it's called. You're drawing down on your line of credit of this $100,000. So that first month, you've got a $100,000 line of credit, you draw down 10,000 of it, now you start paying interest on just that 10,000 that you've drawn down. Okay, does that make sense? The next month, you draw down maybe another $10,000. Now you're paying interest from that point forward on the 20,000 total that you've got, and so forth, so on. So the point is, what you're going to be doing is you're, in essence, going to be accumulating interest over that life of that construction project. Now, some lenders don't require you to do any sort of payback during the construction period. So what happens is you're basically, just like with a credit card, just imagine if the credit card company said to you, all right, you've got a $100,000 line of credit, charge up all the stuff you need to charge up, and at the end of the year, you're going to make one big payment. That's pretty much how a lot of construction loans can work. Other construction loans, they may say, you may have to pay the interest cost each month, you may have to pay some, you know, set amount or whatever, but in many cases, the lender knows you're not generating any income off of that property during the construction period, so it's probably doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to be charging you, or requiring you to make some sort of a payment to them during that construction process, because they know that pretty much everything is going out the door in terms of expense-wise. Okay, does that make, are you comfortable with that? Yes or no? Okay, now let's kind of put it. Yep.
It's the same thing as negative amortization.
No, it's not.
No?
No, different. Okay. No, I mean, it's not. I know we'll talk about negative amortization in a minute. Okay, so with the construction loan,
It's like when where you're accumulating interest. I thought it was
okay. So with the construction loan, what we're sort of saying is that, all right, let's say we've got a $100,000 line of credit. And what interest rate do we want to attach to this line of credit?
7 1/4.
7 1/4. Let's make it a nice round number. Actually, this is going to make it 10%. Only because of the calculations, is it'll just make it easier. All right, 10% interest rate. But it's going to be compounded monthly. All right. So in essence, what's going to happen, oops, here, let's say at the end of month 1, you're going to submit expenses, let's say, of $10,000. Okay, so these are going to be your draws, let's say. All right, so you're going to draw down $10,000 there, and let's say that you do that for the next few months. And maybe you don't draw anything during the 5th month, the 6th month, the 7th month, and then we get down here, and they don't have to be equal amounts, I'm just kind of making them equal.
Realistically, it's usually more like a bell curve.
It is, I would agree. And the only reason I'm doing this is for calculation purposes. All right. And we'll make this last one 20,000. All right, so we should, if I did my math right, total up with a total of $100,000 worth of draws. Okay? But Alex is very correct that normally this is going to be much more of a kind of, you're going to sort of start out with relatively small dollar amounts, kind of work up to really big dollar amounts, back down to smaller dollar amounts. Okay? But for our purposes, we're doing really just almost the opposite. All right, so we get this. So what this means, if you really want to think about it, we're going to be charging interest, and in this case, where this final amount that we're borrowing or drawing down in that 12th month, how much interest are we paying on that? How many months worth of interest?
12.
No.
12.
If we get the money December 31st and our payment is due to the lender on December 31st, how many months are we basically?
Oh, 0.
0.
Yeah.
Okay, so in essence, this one, for 1 month worth of interest. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay? Not 12, because what's happening here is we are getting this money at the end of month 1. Okay? So therefore, it's really 11 months until the end of the 12th month. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Okay. In other words, think of it like this. We're getting the money here January 31st, not January 1st.
So it's 11
January
months.
1st would be right here at time 0. Because we don't have any expenses at time period 0. We don't incur our first cost until the end of that first month. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now, in essence, what this sort of turns into is kind of like, this would be your present value, this would be your term in months, and then your interest rate is going to be a constant 10% all the way down, the compounded monthly, and then you're going to be searching for basically future value that would then be totaled up, and then that would be the total amount that you would end up paying at the end of that 12 months. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
So we find the future value for each of those months?
Yes, but we have a shortcut.
Ooh, like to hear it.
Okay. But I want to do a couple of these real quickly just to kind of illustrate the concept. All right, so if we took that 10,000 for 11 months at 10% interest, future value of that, just that one draw at the end of the 12 months would be $10,955.83. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now for 10 months,
And so the excess would just be the interest?
correct. That's why I use these nice round numbers so you can kind of see for yourself. So 865.29. All I'm doing is changing the term. And for these, we don't have to do anything. Okay.
Just do that. Because you put one in your time
Just how do you get your term to equal this many months in the calculator? Because I'm putting it in as one shift in and I'm getting 12 months. Oh, just 11 in?
Yep. So all you're doing for each of these, once again, 12 payments per year. And then like the first one would be 10,000 as your present value. Term of 11 in, not 11 shift in, just 11 in. Interest rate of 10%. And then solve for future value, and that's where you would get, in that case, the 10,955.83. Then start lowering that term to, let's say, 10 months, resolve, and you end up with 10,865.29, 9 in, future value, 10,775.49, and so forth, so on. Okay? That make sense, everybody? Now, if we were to go through and add all those up, we would find out how much we actually owe. But what I wanted to illustrate here, and we're going to do it, but we're going to do it with a shortcut. Okay? But what I want to illustrate here, and that's the reason I use kind of the same numbers, and I also skipped a few numbers sort of here in the middle, is I want to illustrate the concept. So obviously, this $10,000 that we're borrowing here is costing us more than a dollar amount of the same amount that we're borrowing here. Does everybody see that? Because we're borrowing this for more time than we're borrowing that 10,000. So here's a very valuable lesson. And anyone that's ever done any sort of construction project will tell you, in a perfect world, with you as the developer, general contractor, and paying for the items of construction, what you would prefer to do as the developer, as a general contractor, is to not incur any expenses before you have to, and to wait as long as you can possibly wait to do a draw or to make a payment to your subcontractors. Okay? Now, in practice, you have to be a little bit careful of that, because some folks will take that kind of to the extreme. They'll just sort of say, okay, you did all this work for me on my project. You poured the slab, you cleared the land, and you want payment at the end of the month, okay? And I'm saying, you know what? You want to keep doing work for me in the future? You need to wait a couple of months before I pay you, okay? And if you don't wait a couple of months, I'm going to get somebody new on that next project, all right? And so potentially, okay, I guess I'm going to have to wait, and then you've got to figure out how you're going to pay for your equipment and your people that have worked on that project and whatever materials, and sort of, float that on behalf of basically whoever the general contractor was, okay? Now, you may also just sort of say, pay me now, I don't want to deal with you, okay? And that's going to be perfectly acceptable and normal as well. But the point is that if I, as the developer or the contractor, can delay the payment by an extra month or two, especially when we're talking about big dollars, that can make a significant difference in terms of my interest cost. Okay, does everybody understand that? Now, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to advocate that you try to stiff arm your folks that are, you know, working for you. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a perverse incentive for you to do that. Okay? Because a lot of people, you know, on the flip side would say, okay, in order to keep my contractors happy, the moment they submit an invoice to me, I'm going to pay them right then and there and done. And that's okay too. But realize if you do that, you are in essence then incurring that interest cost right then and there. Okay, make sense? All right.
Do you want the total?
What? Do you want a question?
Do you want the total?
Sure. But we're going to get it another way, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, it's 104,123.
104 what?
123.34.
Okay, good. Okay. And then, as we said here, obviously if we don't incur any sort of cost there, we're not going to have any amounts that we're going to have to obviously carry forward. But this is pretty much how it works. Okay? Comfortable? Now let's show you the shortcut. Okay. So the shortcut is to basically use the net present value function. Okay? So what you're going to do, 12 payments per year, and then the interest rate, we're going to put that in as 10%, and then we'll just start with the payments. So 0 is going to be your initial cash flow for time period 0. In other words, just like here, we don't have anything occurring here at time period 0. So we're going to put that as just a 0. Then we're going to have 10,000 as a cash flow, and that is occurring, in this case, 4 times, so we can shortcut that by 4, shift n sub j. Then we have 0 as a cash flow, occurring 3 times, so shortcut that. And then we have 10,000 occurring 4 times. And then we have 20,000 occurring by itself as our final cash flow. All right. And then once we've got all of that, then the first thing we're going to do, we're going to solve for net present value. The first thing we're going to do. That's not the answer. That's the first thing we're going to do. All right. So let's go ahead and put that into the calculator, see what we get. Okay, everybody get that?
Yep.
Okay, so that's our net present value, which is basically in this particular instance, to a certain extent, is meaningless to us. Although it's sort of saying, well, yeah, you could have had that amount, you know, up front, but that's not what we're solving for. Okay, so we're trying to trick the calculator into giving us what we want. Our calculator does not have a net future value function. So what we've got to do is solve for net present value and then compound it forward to get, in essence, the equivalent of net future value. So what you're going to do is you're going to clear everything out once you've got that number.
When we type in like 10,000 cash flow and then the 4 shift NJ,
yep.
I don't know why, maybe I'm doing it wrong, but when I type that in, it just goes to cash flow 2, it doesn't jump to cash flow 5.
ignore that, because it is simply saying that is the dollar amount for that particular series of cash flows. And so it's sort of think of it as a series of 4 amounts contained within that first cash flow. Okay.
Here's what I found.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. All right. So now, okay, you're gonna clear everything out. Then you're gonna just put that amount back in: 94, 253, 76, in essence, as our present value. Then you're gonna put in 10% as the interest rate. Then we're gonna put in 12 as our N, solve for future value. And you end up getting 104, 123, 36. So let's see if that matches what Chase gave us. It does. Okay? So all we've done here with this little calculation is we've calculated initially the net present value, and then we're just compounding that forward by 12 months at the 10% interest rate to come up with the total amount owed. Okay? Make sense? Chase?
So we're taking the net present value of all those cash flows, and then I guess I'm confused why.
It's a trick we have to do with this particular calculator because we don't have a net future value key.
Gotcha.
If we had a net future value key on the calculator, and some of the other calculators have that, this one doesn't, then you would just simply be able to solve for net future value.
Gotcha. So you're just taking that NPV function and then using it as a factor to find the net future value. Gotcha. Okay.
That's all you're doing. Okay? Yep.
Do we need to clear all before doing the?
Yes, you do, because this is a different set of calculations, independent of that over there. Okay? All right, good.
Could you show that I want to get the C-trace top part?
The sequence
faster.
What, I'm sorry?
So then we're doing 12 payments per month on this because it's calculated monthly.
Question, you said that, it's like a credit card, going back to, so, you just did it for 1 year, is that like the term of the construction loan, was it 1 year? Or you just did it for 1 year?
In this case, I only did it for 1 year because that was the term of the construction loan.
That was the term of the even though it's, you said it's like a credit card, the credit card is like, I goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing, that all we're, okay, for simplicity, I limited our construction period for 1 year. And so what we're saying is at the end of that first year, or the year of the construction period, this is how much we owe the lender in one big lump sum. So, at this point, now what we have to do is at some point in this process, once the project is basically complete or pre-leased, we have to get a takeout commitment from a permanent lender that is different in many cases than our construction lender. The construction lender, in many cases, is going to be, in a lot of cases, a local commercial bank because they have experience in doing commercial loans because those require a fair amount of oversight with respect to sending out people who are knowledgeable about the construction process on behalf of the bank to say, hey, does their slab look okay? Does their, the framing that they did look okay? Does the roof that they did look okay? Okay, and those different sort of points during the construction process, the construction lender wants to make certain that the work that they say has been done, and that it's been, properly permitted, properly inspected, to be able to give them additional releases of funds in the form of the draws that they would get over the course of the construction period. Okay? And then after you've done all that, you've got your construction loan, kind of, and you're ready to close it out to then go to your permanent financing, which is going to be your more traditional mortgage, you're going to have to find or identify who that lender is going to be, which may or may not be the same lender. Okay? And that's why it's called a takeout commitment, that this permanent lender has agreed to sort of take out and pay off the construction loan, and then you sort of start now the traditional mortgage and go forward.
So if this was 2 years, you still be
Yep.
establishing one?
Well, it would just be a longer term. So instead of 11 months, then it would be probably, like 24 months or 23 months, really.
Say like it's the same thing if you were doing residential. You got a construction loan, even the first year you build the property, they'll do the jobs for construction, and then when the property's done, they're gonna close it out and turn it out to you. And write your real loan, you just tack on the construction loan and the loan amount that you raised.
Yeah, but once again, every situation is different. I have had situations of where it's the same lender. I've had situations of where it's a totally different lender. Because what may happen, once again, as I was talking about, lenders are retailers. Some lenders are really good and really, non-problematic as construction lenders, and they offer maybe a really good deal, but then they don't, they sort of, lure you in, with that really good deal on the construction side, but then take, full and complete, just, horrible terms on the permanent side. Okay, does that make sense? Because they sort of feel like they've got you locked into a deal, and that you don't want to go through the brain damage of finding another lender. Okay, all right, moving forward. Okay, so what we're going to do, so just in Excel, I'm just going to show you this. You don't need to do this on your own. But let's just say for those first 12 months, we put in 10,000, and this is for the first 4 months. Yep, and then 0, 0, 0, and then 10,000. Oh, interest rate. Yeah. Interest rate on this one will be 10%. And this is going to be 10%. There we go. Okay, so all this is just showing it in Excel. So what I did here, basically the same sort of thing, calculated the net present value for the construction term, put in this case, 10% is the interest rate, divided by 12, obviously monthly, and then obviously the values for the cash flows. So I get the net present value just like what we did. So the 94, 253, 76, and then did the second calculation of where would be the future value of that amount for 12 months, and once again match up with what we've got. Okay, just to show that once again you can obviously do it in Excel. So, if you were to then, change any of the numbers in Excel, then obviously it automatically updates, what the amounts would be and so forth, so on. Okay. Okay. Get the idea? What was that? Moving forward.
It's definitely a bot.
Okay. 2 more topics, and then we're ready to go. Negative amortization loans. Okay. So, a negative amortization occurs whenever you're not making payments sufficiently high to fully service the mortgage. So just a simple way of thinking about this is you borrowed some money and your monthly payment is, let's say, $1,000 a month, okay, for whatever dollar amount you borrowed, but your monthly payment's $1,000 a month, and that would be sufficient to pay off the mortgage within whatever time period that you have set up with your lender. I'm purposely leaving those open and vague so that you should understand conceptually what's going on. So the payment would need to be $1,000 a month in order to fully pay off the mortgage, okay? So everybody follow me on that. But your lender, for whatever reasons, has said, let's make a deal, okay? And the deal that potentially they're willing to make with you is to allow you to make lower payments than the $1,000. And you're saying, why would they allow me to make payments lower than the $1,000? Well, maybe they let you do it because of financial hardship, okay? That maybe, once again, you've lost your job, and they're saying, we want to be the gracious lender and allow you to make payments of only $500 a month, okay? Or maybe it's a situation of where they potentially want to allow you to grow into a loan over time. They sort of say, all right, we know you can't really afford $1,000 a month as a payment right now, maybe as a business or as an individual. So we're going to let you make these smaller payments of $500 a month, you know, for the first few years. And then what we're doing, and this is the part from the lender's perspective, is they're basically that difference of that $500. In other words, you're saying the normal mortgage payment would be $1,000, and they're letting you pay half that. So what that means, just in very simple terms, is you really are going to be owing them another $500 a month at some point in the future, okay? Or the value associated with that loss of payment for that time period, okay? And so what may happen is that they allow you to make that lower than normal payment for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years out of maybe a 30-year loan. But now what has happened is your loan balance, instead of going down, your loan balance is going up because you're not making payments sufficiently high to pay down the balance, okay? Does that make sense? So where you might have owed at the beginning of the loan $100,000, now maybe you owe $115,000 because of not making those full sufficient payments. So you have incurred negative amortization, okay? Meaning that you now owe more than what you previously owed, or more than you originally borrowed. All right, so now let's put it to paper in terms of a problem. Yep.
In the book, correct me if I'm wrong, it had like, I don't know if it was construction loan, that's why maybe I was confused, but basically they bought a property that didn't have any cash flow at all and they were renovating it, and then 2 years into it, it started making money, and the interest from the beginning was tacked onto the end.
It's an accrual.
Okay. And
so I mean, in that sense, a construction loan is similar to a negative amortization, but it's not exactly the same.
The interest is being almost.
Let me go through an example, okay? And then if you want to draw
maybe like the construction loan isn't the negative, but the negative can be a construction loan type deal?
It could be. Okay. All right. So let's just say that we start out with a monthly payment-based loan, 12 payments per year. And let's say that the loan
make that a negative
is $100,000 to start with. And let's say that our interest rate on that loan is 10%. And let's say the term is for 30 years. So out of memory, the payment would be $877.57. Okay? Now, so do the calculation real quick.
So if we just put that payment in
You gotta solve for it.
But like, wouldn't it solve the same thing if we just put in 877.57 as payment?
In order for it to complete the equation, it has to solve for it.
God, that's annoying. Because I did that, and I put, because it says 877.57, I just put that in.
No.
Yeah, and it like wasn't giving me the answer, and I was like, and he's like, oh.
Because that is the answer.
Yeah, but exactly my point. It is the answer.
Right. Okay, so we got the answer there of 877.57. All right, now let's say that the lender allows us to start making payments of something less than that. So let's just say that they allow us to make payments of $600 a month. All right? So if that's the case, what we would do is put in 600, make that a negative, as our new payment amount.
Is it negative because it's lower than the,
No, it's just negative because it, like the payment itself, is also a negative. Okay, so instead of making $877.57 as the payment, we're now making a $600 a month payment. Okay, now the question would then be, all right, after allowing this to happen for, let's say, how many years? 5 years. Okay. So one input, 60, 12 months times 5 years. What would our balance on this loan be?
$118, 068.65.
Oops, let me do that one more time.
Yeah, because you put in the, because we have it as year, and you put the,
I have it as monthly.
60.
Yeah, 60 months, 5 years.
Wouldn't we make it 5 years?
No, that is 5 years. You said at the end of 5 years.
You got 180, you got 118.
Yeah. $118,068.65, oops, would be our balance at end of year 5. Okay, or month 60. So what we were saying, simply put, how much do we borrow? 100,000. Yes. And because we're making lower than normal payments on this of $600 a month instead of the full $877.57, our balance on our loan is creeping up over time to where at the end of 5 years, we actually end up owing $18,000 more than what we originally borrowed. Thus, negative amortization. Does that make sense? Yes or no?
So by paying less than what is required, it essentially just inflates the future
Correct.
value payment of that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because you're owing more because
You
you're not
gotta pay
fully.
it back somewhere, and now you're just getting interest accrued on that because you're not paying it off as quick.
Correct.
Understood.
So it's like, for example, I mean, once again, whether you're talking about a traditional lender, you're talking about, let's say that I own a property and I have a tenant, and the tenant is telling me, hey, I've had a few bad months, I can't make the mortgage payment or make the full mortgage payment, so I let them slide for a few months, but then it's not like I'm not charging them interest on those,
Yeah, you're
those
just
few months.
allowing them to tack it.
I'm allowing them
Right.
to tack it on, and so ultimately, I'm still gonna get paid back, and I'm
Yeah,
still
of
gonna get
course.
paid back the interest that I'm owed, it's just that
On a
I'm
different
delaying
term.
it a
Right.
little bit further.
Gotcha.
You would do that full out and then divide it by the amount of months? Like if you were to tell them, like if they wanted to know how much interest?
Yeah, I mean, once again, we could put together a spreadsheet and actually show what the exact dollar amount extra that they would be paying, but in most cases, they're just happy to not be paying it. you know.
But then they just get slapped with it, and then they're like,
But once again,
Or lose the property.
you're trying to assume everyone is playing on the same level with respect to their understanding of things. There are many people who are not, and therefore the opportunity is there, right or wrong, for someone who does understand it to potentially, you know, profit off of it. Right, wrong, good or bad. Not drawing any sort of moral conclusions on that. Okay? Because I mean, think about it like this. And I use this, you know, and I say this as a joke, but it's also sort of true. You know, part of basically being sort of a business major and a business mindset, to a certain extent, those are some of your skill sets. But yet, people who may be liberal arts majors and very smart people have never seen any of this, don't understand any of this, and in essence will be taken advantage of by people who do understand it. Does that make sense, conceptually? I'm not, once again, not trying to draw any judgments. I'm just simply saying that this is, you know, simply a set of calculations, simply a way to allow potentially someone to not have to make full payments on something, but ultimately they're going to pay for it. Right, wrong, good or bad. Now, once again, you can argue the merits of, oh, you know, well, all that extra interest they're going to have to pay, is that really fair? Well, technically, you didn't get paid, so why should, you know, you have to suffer? Yep.
The same thing plays in part when you make late payments, right?
Yeah, exactly the same sort of thing.
You're still allowing the interest to compound.
Yep, and in here, you're basically saying, you're allowing them $277.57 a month of late payments for 5 years.
and that could be in your lease, right? Like if you, for however long is the interest be?
Sure. Okay, question over here, Justin?
Yeah, so really the only, this is basically just like a regular amortization. We're just putting in a negative payment, or we're just putting in a negative, basically a negative payment.
Well, it's not that you're just paying in a payment that's less than the normal payment required to amortize the mortgage.
So after we calculate that in the calculator, then we have to keep the pre-existing, you know.
Everything else is going to stay the same. You know, the original loan amount stays the same, the interest rate stays the same, the term stays the same, but what we're changing is the amount of payment, so therefore the balance of the loan is what's changing. And it's going up because you're not making a big enough payment to pay it off.
And in any investment situation where you're looking to do this?
Right?
Or not? But, I mean, is there an investment situation where you would be looking for this type of loan?
I suppose you could. I mean, most of the time, these sort of circumstances are born out of necessity. You know, it's a situation of somebody has fallen on hard times, you're trying to give them a break, but yet you're not letting them off the hook. And there's a difference, you know, because you're giving them a break in the sense you're not forcing them to make the payment right now, but you're not letting them off the hook in the sense that they're still going to have to make those payments, it's just going to happen in the future, and you're going to charge them interest for it. Okay.
If you want to remove the negative and you made it a positive. So for instance,
Well, yeah, no, if you want to make it a positive amortization, you just pay off more. So you can, you know, in essence, like
$1,200.
Yeah, you pay $1,200 a month on that size of a normal payment, then you're going to have positive amortization, paying off the loan quicker, and having even a smaller loan balance.
Is this any similar to like a college loan that they'll tell you, yeah, you don't have to make payments while you're in school, or very little bit of that payment?
To a certain extent, but then, you know, and every one of those is structured a little bit. Every one of those is structured a little bit differently in the sense that some, yeah, you get to defer your payments, but you don't necessarily get to defer the interest on the payments. So, but each one is a little bit different. Okay, so I don't even want to get into that because we'll spend 3 hours just talking about that, and we don't need to do that. Okay, other questions on this?
Would the lender let you do that for the life of the loan? Like
Well, theoretically they could. I don't know what the real motivation would be other than, yeah, then you're going to have a big balance at the end of all of this. It's even worse than a, you know, interest-only loan. because you're just building up a bigger balance that you're going to have to pay off at the end. Okay? All right? All right. Other questions on this before we move on to kind of the final piece? Okay? All right. Reverse, and this was not in the chapter, by the way. A little extra. Reverse annuity mortgages, or reverse mortgages. Otherwise titled, How to Take Advantage of Old People. All right. So, you have probably seen these late night commercials on TV, and they talk, they have some sort of celebrity up there saying, hey, do you have equity in your home that you want to take advantage of because your Social Security payment isn't big enough to, in essence, fund your lifestyle? If you do, and you own your home, give us a call because we're going to make you a deal with a reverse annuity mortgage where you'll get annual payments, for a certain period of time and allow you to live the lifestyle that you want to live. Okay? That's pretty much the pitch. All right, have you heard that before or seen it on TV?
Is that the JG?
Google it, okay? Trust me, it's there. In many different forms.
Yeah, that JG Wetmore?
No, that's a whole different thing. That's where you get a cash settlement for some sort of dollar amount that you won in a award or a lottery or whatever. This is dealing with your personal single-family home residence that you have paid off over years. So think about it like this. Let's say that you're 70 years old, okay? 19 years to go. All right, 70 years old, and you're saying to yourself, okay, I've retired, I'm collecting Social Security, and I'm saying to myself, hey, this is not enough. I need some extra cash. I don't have maybe a lot of savings, so I'm probably going to die in another 10 years. So, let's think about doing one of these reverse annuity mortgages. So, basically, in this particular instance, we're going to say, we're going to make this one payment per year. All right? And so we have to kind of come up with what is the market value of our home sort of now, and kind of what do we sort of expect it to be maybe, let's say, 10 years from now, all right? But it's pretty much going to be, to a certain extent, the value is going to be kind of in today's dollars, which is another way you kind of indirectly get screwed. So what you're basically doing is you're sort of saying, all right, I am going to say that my home is worth, let's say, $500,000, and that's going to be maybe 10 years from now. And these guys are going to base this on possibly, let's just say, 5% interest rate. How much can they afford to pay me starting right now at time period 0? All right, and then maybe each year. Sort of each successive year, okay? Does that kind of make sense? So in other words, what's going to happen is they're going to sort of say that the value of my home in the future is expected to be this $500,000. So we're going to put that as our future value. We put it as positive or negative, either way is fine for our purposes, all right? But we're also going to have to make another adjustment here in a minute. I'm going to do it one way and then I'm going to show it to you a different way. All right, and we're going to say 5%, and this is going to be for 10 years. And so we're going to be solving for payment. Okay, so let's start with this. This is not correct, but we're going to start with this. So I want to show you what you need to do to adjust it. Okay. Okay. So in essence, what this is sort of saying is that I would receive payments of $39,752 at the beginning of each year for the next 10 years. Okay? So if you just do the simple math on this for a second, that means 397,522, let's say 90 rounded, okay? So in essence, my $500,000 house, I'm really only getting in hard cash currency $397,000 up front. Okay? But this is the catch. They're giving me all these payments, and they're giving them to me, you know, obviously starting a full 10 years before this balance. But here's the part that where the rubber hits the road. All sounds good up to this point, yes? Sure. For the most part, okay? But here's the catch. They say, okay, number one, why would I do this? Well, here's the reason. I get to live in my house for the next 10 years. And I get to get this dollar amount each year for the next 10 years. But what happens at the end of that 10 years? How about all that? Basically, I either have to come up with $500,000 or I lose my house. Okay? But the whole point is, they're telling these people, yeah, do this because you need the money now, but yet at the end of that, 10-year period, yeah, all of a sudden, you're homeless. Okay? That's why I say I take advantage of old people, because to a certain extent.
Don't they get that? Like, isn't the idea like, I'm here to buy your house in 10 years?
Well, they kind of usually do the mortgage of your life expectancy. So if
Yeah.
you're 60, 61, they calculate you're going to live 30 years. So they calculate all the years. You can't live past 105. So they calculate the year from the time you're in school doing it. So when they think you're going to die, and then they calculate it that way. So then they say, okay, your house is worth $500,000. Then we're going to pay you every year that we think you're going to live. Then we're going to remove the taxes and insurance. Then you get your payment from that.
And then if you die, it's our house?
Well, if you die, then they tell your family to have a year at certain times
To pay that, or it's our house.
Or it's your house.
Gotcha.
At a 20% discount of whatever value that you owe. So if you owe $200,000, they're going to remove 20% off of that, and then you can pay $180,000.
So if you literally had no friends, no family, were living out there, you could just get paid, kick rocks, and you're fine.
Yeah.
Cool, that's
For
great.
10
You know what
years.
I'm doing when I'm 80.
I said 70.
Yeah.
But the point being is, this has been used and abused in a variety of formats. And some states have made it illegal. Some states are very, narrow in terms of what they will allow and when the payoff, amounts are incurred and that sort of thing. Okay, now, I also said that what we just calculated is not quite right, and there's a reason for that. So, and I purposely am doing it this way because up to this point, everything that we have done in this course has made the assumption that all payments are made or received when? At the end of the month or end of the year. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, now what I said about this one was our actual first payment occurs here, which is at the beginning of the year. All right? Well, that changes things a little bit. All right? In terms of how the calculator has to adjust for that, because what we're really, with the calculation we just did, the real first payment occurs here at the end of year 1, all the way up until here at the end of year 10. Okay? What we've got to do is we've got to kick it back by 1 year or 1 period. And the way we do that is with a function on the calculator and also in Excel. It's called sort of the begin function or the annuity due function. Look it up, annuity due or the begin function. What that does in the calculator
That's to find the year 0 disbursement?
Yeah, it kicks everything back. In other words, what this function will do is it moves everything back by 1 period.
Instead of just doing 10,
Okay?
11
And on the calculator, the function key is begin end, which is, if you look over on the far right of the calculator, underneath the margin key, make sure that's where it is, yep. Begin end key, then that will make the adjustment. Okay, and I'll show you what to do here. Calculator turn back on.
So are we at least keeping what we already have punched in, or are we gonna have to clear it all out?
Nope. What you can do is you can hit the shift begin end key right after you've done that, and then re-hit the payment key, and you should get 37,859.32. And so what that's saying is, in essence, your payment is actually going to be a little bit less than you thought it was, but you're also receiving that payment, in essence, a full year before what we'd anticipated receiving it here. Okay, does that make sense?
Say that last sentence one more time.
Okay. We're receiving less money per year for this 10-year payout.
But we're getting paid 12 months early.
Because we're getting paid 12 months early.
On day 1.
Correct.
Or day technically 0, but
Correct.
in terms of year 1 would be day 365.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Okay.
And then they're still getting payments all the way until the 10th year?
They're getting payments until the beginning of the 10th year.
And then at the end of the 10th year, they're required to pay back?
No, at the end of the 10th year, they're required to pay back.
Yeah, okay. So the beginning of the 10th year, they get their disbursement, but then they're required at the end of that same year to pay
Correct.
everything back?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Okay? Now, okay, everyone hear me and look at me. And there's a reason why I made this the last question on the test. Okay? Or the quiz. I'll use that word test. Okay, on the quiz. All right, so the reason is because once you put this into begin end mode, in your calculator, in the display, it will have the word beg for begin. Okay? And so from this point forward, any computation you do will be in that begin mode, and it will throw it off by putting everything back a period. Okay, so right now, with me, calculator in hand, hit the shift key and hit the margin key or begin end mode to get rid of the BEG out of your display. Okay? Because if I made that the first question on the quiz, there's a very good chance you would not do that and would follow through, and with every answer on the quiz would be incorrect. Okay, I don't want that to happen. All right? Okay, is everybody with me? Now, also, I will say to you, after you do that question, I would highly suggest you put it back into normal mode by doing that.
But when you hit clear all, it doesn't clear that?
No, that is one thing it does not clear out.
Yeah.
It stays there, okay? And so you've got to change it back. Otherwise, next week, whenever you come in thinking, woo, I've got all this, and then you realize you're going to be screwed on every single calculation. Okay? All right. Are we good?
We're great.
All right, so let's do this. You're going to take a quick 5-minute break. You know, we put it as 11. That actually gives you a full hour for this quiz, which I can't possibly imagine you needing that amount of time, but...
And then we have time to go do San Miguel's thing.
All right. No, you don't do it.
Compared to last year.
I